Hi, everybody. Whoa! Oh, my goodness. What did you just do to this Englishman? I shall attempt to give a commencement speech, even though my circuits are blown. Blown by so much love, so much celebration, and so much joy. It's an honor to be here. I'm from England, as you might guess by the accent. Being nominated for Most Authentically Happy Person in Britain isn't that hard. But I just want to get that done. If you want a fast, unique selling point, I'm here with my wife, Holly, and I'm here, thank you. I'm here with my daughter, Bo, and Bo celebrated her 9.5-year birthday exactly on Thursday. And I'm also here with my son, Christopher, who has been nearly 6 for about 8 months now. And he will be 6 very soon. I'm addressing you, the graduates, the faculty, the families, JR, the live streamers. Hi, we've got dressed up for you, live streamers. We can see what you're wearing too. I hope you realize that. It is a two-way thing, yeah. Nobody told you that? Yeah, it's true. So I will, if I may, just do a little introduction and then to me, and then I'd like to share with you 5 ideas. 5 ideas that I would ask you to consider taking with you from here back out into your life. I grew up in a little village in England called Littleton. It was very little. At the age of 18, I set out for Middle England on an adventure to go and study psychology. It was a 3-year program, actually, called Communications, and there were modules on psychology and philosophy and linguistics and sociology and all good things like that. For another 3 years after that, I studied psychotherapy and counseling. The study really never ends, does it? It's a lifelong thing. I've been studying ever since. But in those first 6 years, if I was to describe the curriculum to you, I would say that the curriculum was interesting, but not transformative. Interesting, but somewhat like the Tower of Pizza, a little off balance. There was, for instance, not much happiness on our curriculum. The curriculum really was an A to Z of misery. The first couple of years were essentially basic suffering for beginners. Then the next couple of years after that was more intermediate suffering, psychotic neurosis, neurotic psychosis, that type of thing. And then later on, we got into some more advanced suffering that apparently is described as incurable. And of course, it is incurable until you get to know about the self that has never needed to be cured in the first place. But of course, I didn't learn about that self just yet. So in 6 years, we only had 1 lecture on happiness. 1 lecture on happiness. Imagine if you'd missed it. Students miss lectures. It happens. So you've got to picture the scene. It's like, where were you? What do you mean? Well, this morning there was a lecture on happiness. There was? I thought it said subjective well-being. It did. Apparently, that's what psychologists call happiness. Doesn't sound very happy, does it? Why don't they just call it happiness? Well, I guess that would be too happy, wouldn't it? Was it a great lecture? Should I retake the year? And it's like, no, don't worry. It was terrible. We all left miserable. And we did. It was a terrible lecture. In hindsight, we didn't study happiness because we didn't understand the purpose of happiness. We didn't understand that the purpose of happiness is to acquaint you with your true self. That the purpose of happiness is to help you follow your joy. That the purpose of happiness is to help you, encourage you, inspire you to be a renaissance worker on this planet so that you never ever have to do a day of work again in your life. You will simply be expressing your heart and your soul, and you will help the world evolve in the direction of love thereby. So we only had one lecture on happiness. We also, by the way, only had one lecture on love. Just one, that's it. We didn't study love, we studied Freud. Freud said, when one is in love, one is very crazy. But Freud also said this: in the final analysis, in order not to fall ill, one must learn to love. And there were 2 or 3 lines like that, truly, that stayed with me all the way up until today. Somehow, you and I have to learn how to love and keep on loving to a point where love no longer becomes a word, where love somehow no longer becomes something we feel, where love actually is integrated into our true identity, and we understand that we are the love that we are looking for. We had one lecture on love, I think. Well, I asked about it. Let's put it this way. The lecture was called Interpersonal Attraction Theory, and I remember asking the lecturers, is this love we're talking about? And the lecturers just wouldn't really commit, you know. But I remember at Christmas sending Christmas cards to them, and I signed them with lots of interpersonal attraction, you know. No happiness, no love, and really to Ron's point, the point that Ron made right at the beginning of this ceremony, no soul. No soul whatsoever. Lots of ology, but not much psyche, which is strange when you think that psyche means soul. Psychology is the study of the soul. And yet, for instance, in the Oxford Dictionary of Psychology, in the index, there is no listing for soul. This clearly needs to be corrected. I remember thinking at the time, I wish there was a course in the world that offered a degree in spiritual psychology. I must be dreaming. There can't possibly be such a thing. But of course there was, and there is, and you are the expression of that. No happiness, no love, no soul, no God. No God in our classes. And yet I feel that surely the purpose of psychology, surely the purpose of having a mind is to use that mind to tune into the thoughts of God. Why else should we have a mind? You know, I think really the world, if it's suffering from anything, it's suffering from psychology. That's all. We're just suffering from psychology. Who we are is perfectly okay. Who we are doesn't need to be cured. Who you are, who I am, we are whole, we are blessed, we are loved already. That exists. We're merely suffering from psychology. But when we use our mind to tune into the thoughts of God, all of that can be healed, I believe, in this instant and every instant in our life. So, this was my study. It was interesting, but not transformative. I was very lucky. I met a student on my program who was to become really my first spiritual mentor. He was different to the rest of us. He was referred to by the lecturers as a mature student. We were all 18 and he was 24. 24 is ancient, isn't it, when you're 18? He sat at the back of the class. He was often the last one to arrive and the first one to leave, and after several weeks of being on the program, we still didn't know who this man was. His name was Avanti. He was from India. He was a yogi, and he was the man who introduced me to my first spiritual texts. He introduced me to the Gita, the Upanishads, the Dhammapada, the Tao Te Ching, to Paramahansa Yogananda's great work, Swami Vivekananda, and on we went. Beautiful, beautiful texts. He was also, though, the man who introduced me to my first daily spiritual practice. The sorts of meditations where you look at candles for hours on end, and you look at keyholes as well for hours on end. And I would meditate up to 8 hours a day, and I can tell you it was a truly painful, awful experience. The hardest moments were when I would be meditating and I knew that I was missing Starsky and Hutch. That was like the most painful thing in my life, I have to tell you, because we didn't have recordings in those days or playbacks or anything. So I was missing a real episode of Starsky and Hutch for the world. It was tough, I'm telling you. And after that, he really set me on my spiritual path, and I think my spiritual path has been, in many ways, the expression of it has been to find a way to blend spirituality and psychology together. I believe that psychology by itself cannot heal psychology. Psychology by itself, in the way that we think of psychology today, is not transformative. Psychology is like this horizontal line that's taking us forward often as fast as we can go, or backwards as fast as we can go. But spirituality meets this horizontal line with a vertical line. And this vertical line is what helps us to experience the thoughts of our true nature, to experience the love of the divine, and in many ways to bless our psychology so that we no longer hurt ourselves with our judgments, so that we can sit in Rumi's field, so that we can have an experience of what it's like to be us without judging ourselves, so that we can have an experience of being with each other without judging ourselves. Spirituality, I believe, is here to save psychology. And when you put the two together, they're a great, great team. So you can imagine when I found out about USM, it felt like an answer in many ways to a prayer. I believe that what you have here at USM is a blueprint which is showing the world another possibility, which is showing the profession of psychology another possibility, by the way. I say this with sadness, but I think the psychology profession in many ways is sick today. I think in many ways it's sold itself out today as well. I would have to say I think it's sold itself out to the pharmaceutical profession in many ways. And we are here to partner with the pharmaceutical profession because I believe in that, but we shouldn't sell ourselves out to it. Psychology 2.0 is here. It's necessary, it's needed. You are the blueprint for that. And the new psychology has to be a psychology that integrates the pharmaceutical as well as the psychological and the spiritual. That's what we're here to do. And you're already doing it. Thank you. All right, so 5 messages. That looks like 10, but it's just because I'm doubly excited about my 5 messages. 5 messages. So I just got to get it some excitement out. All right. Here's the first message. Ready? Grads. Message number 1. You've graduated. There you are. That's the first message. Your first self, your real self, understands that this is a celebration. Your first self, your real self, understands you've already graduated. The other self, the self that came after the first self, the self you've been trying so hard to be all this time still thinks you're about to graduate. And I just want you to know that bit's done. There's no catches anymore. It's completely happened. You see, the human story is really a story of two selves. The first self is the original self. This is the self, for instance, that in the Catholic tradition is referred to by some as the original blessing. The original blessing. This is your true self. The original sin is forgetting about the original blessing. Does that make sense? That's why we talk about the original sin. Not to feel guilty, but to remember the original blessing. That you and I are completely beyond needing to be cured. Because the greatest truth is, there's nothing wrong with us. We were created beautifully. That's the original blessing. Similarly, in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about the original face. And that's your original self. That's self number one. That's the self that knows you've graduated. Self number two is what I call in my literature the learned self. The self we've learned to think of ourselves as. This is the self that the Greeks called the persona. They called the first self the psyche, psychology, but then the persona came in next, your mask. Freud calls this learned self your ego, a sense of a separate self. Western psychologists call this self a self-image. Austin Powers calls this your mini-me. Other commentators might call this self your Facebook self. Your original you knows that you have graduated and that it's not a mistake. The original you knows that you're not a clerical error. The original you knows that there isn't a final test before you leave this building. The original you understands that you are credited and accredited purely in spirit. The original you understands as well, fundamentally, that the faculty have not made a mistake about you. Okay? They know what they're doing. The not spiritual enough police are not on their way. They never will be. You've got it. Keep the certificate with you. Wrap it up, put it in your wallet, wherever you need to put, or your purse, but it's yours from now on, and you have truly graduated. You know, like in weddings, when there's that moment, is there anybody here who knows why these two should not be wed? Whoa. Lucky we didn't have one of those today, wasn't it? Especially with the family here and everything. Oh, jeepers. The honest truth is that you graduated the moment you signed up for the program. You really did. Why? Because even though you told yourself 1 time, 10 times, 100 times not to do this program yet, even though you told yourself however many times it was that this was not the right time to do the program, even though you had many good reasons not to do this program, you still stepped up and you enrolled. An enrollment on a program like this, an enrollment on any of USM's programs, is a graduation in itself. So you graduated the moment you began this program. And your family and friends felt it. They felt it because as you stepped up to the plate, you invited all of us, your family and friends, to step up to the plate in our way too. Why is that? Because when one member of the family decides to grow, fasten your seatbelts, everybody else in the family, we all are invited to grow. And it's the way it works, isn't it? It's how it happens. You've always had the power, my dear. You've had it all along, said the witch and the wizard from the north. And I hope you believed it, because they saw that power in you right from the beginning. From here, you will keep on graduating. I honestly believe that your goal is, and my goal, and all of our goals, is to become more and more of the person we already are. And for that reason, our graduating will be a lifelong process. If you ever think something is missing in your life, it's probably you. It's probably more of the real you. If you think something's missing in your relationships, if you think something's missing in your work, if you think something is missing in your spiritual practice, in your creativity, it's probably you. And you graduate when you dare to step forward and be even more of who you have come here to be. That's the goal. That's what this works for. And the message is everywhere, by the way. Absolutely everywhere. Bo, Christopher, and me were watching Kung Fu Panda 3 2 nights ago. And I tell you what, Panda was having a really difficult time. He was learning some moves from his master, and he just felt he couldn't do these moves. And at one point he said, do you remember this, Bo and Christopher? Panda basically said to the guru, I just can't do this. I can't be you. And the master said, I'm not trying to turn you into me. I'm trying to turn you into you. There's the line. It's everywhere. The truth is out. And I'd like to, if I may, just quote John Roger, founder of USM. He said, all that you want to be, you already are. All you have to do is move your awareness there and recognize the reality of your own soul. Message number 1. Message number 2. Remember what you've learned. I say this because you won't. It just seems to be the way of things, yeah? It's as if we have this habit of spiritual amnesia. And the spiritual amnesia means that we forget about the light within, that we forget to call in the light, and that we forget to be the light. This happens to all of us. This happens to Dory. If you've seen Finding Dory, Bo and Christopher, you'll know about this. Dory has short-term memory loss. She keeps forgetting about her family, okay? None of my speeches, by the way, used to have content from children's movies. I just need to point that out right now, but they just sort of pop in this way. I'm speaking from experience as well here, though. There have been plenty of times when I've been in trouble, when I've experienced what you would call the dark night of the soul. I've since learned, by the way, there's no such thing. That's another story, but just to say briefly, there's no such thing as a dark night of the soul. There's only a dark night of the ego. And that's good news, because the soul saves the ego, and the soul saves the ego every time. But there was this time when I was having this dark night of the ego. I just finished a project and I was empty. I was done. I was finished. There was no wind in my sails. I was just gone. I felt like my life's work was done. There was just nothing left to do. And I felt terrible. I mean, inside I just felt like winter, and my confidence was like at this all-time low. And it lasted, I'd say, probably about 3 months. Okay, right at the end of this really big project I'd done. And I walked into a shop one day, and I saw a magazine up on the shelf. I think I was in the shop to buy chocolate. I think that was my strategy at the time. Enough chocolate will convert itself into a spiritual experience, I'll be fine. But anyway, there was this magazine, and it had an article on the front cover, and it said, boost your confidence. Boost your confidence, and I think it was like 10 guaranteed methods by world experts in self-esteem. And I was at such a low point, I just thought, I've got to buy that magazine, because maybe that's why I'm really in this shop. Anyway, I got the magazine home, and I don't know if it was person number 1 or person number 2, but this was the really terrible thing. It was me. I was like the world expert number 1 or world expert number 2. And the thing I was saying was something about being even more of who you really are. And it was just this extraordinary moment, a comedy, of course, of looking at this article and realizing, my goodness, I really do know what I need to know. This is a question of digging deep and understanding that it's there. The great thing, I suppose, about remembering what it is we're here to learn is to understand that the truth is something we don't really learn, it's something we recognize. Can you think about this for a moment, like in your life, when you've ever heard something that's really truthful? It's not as if you are hearing it for the first time. It's not like a, wow, I've never thought that. It's more like a, yes, that's the truth. Does that make sense? And when we respond to truth like that, that must, to me, mean we carry the truth. You and I already know what we need to know. You especially know what you need to know. You are equipped for that now. So now the key is to honor that and to understand that you have this direct line to all of the wisdom that you are ever going to need in your life at this point and forevermore. And there are no exceptions to this. There's a Buddhist master called Holden who said, from the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. From the very beginning, all beings are Buddha. William Wordsworth said, we come trailing clouds of glory. We come with what we need. Rumi said, we are swimming in intelligence. This intelligence is here for us the whole time. And in my favorite book, A Course in Miracles, it says, enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. So that's message number 2. Message number 3. Message number 3, I think in some ways, there's an echo here from what Mary shared with you earlier. Message number 3 is make no plans. Make no plans. You've graduated. Right now, you exist in a field which is, if you like, Rumi's field of non-judgment, but it's also a field of infinite possibility. This moment, right here, right now, infinite possibility. You've graduated. You're not normal anymore. You never were normal, but you'll never be able to try to be as normal as you were trying to be before, so don't do it anymore. It's all right. Normal has a terrible track record on this planet, so we can afford to let go of trying to be normal. This is a field of possibility. Your future is recalibrating itself entirely right now. Okay? And because it's recalibrating itself right now, any plan you were to make in this moment, I would suggest would be too small for you. Does that make sense? The thing to do right now is to hold your nerve. Hold your nerve and do nothing. Okay? I know it's tricky to do this. It's countercultural. Many of us are brought up in communities, in societies, in cultures which say, make it happen. And I'm saying the opposite to you. I'm saying right now, let's not make anything happen. Let's stop, let's rest, and instead of making plans, let's receive the plan. Yeah? So, so this is my favorite book, A Course in Miracles. Anybody come across A Course in Miracles before? Can I see? Woo! Course in Miracles is a publishing phenomenon. It's sold millions of copies all over the world and hardly anyone's read it. Because it's 1,400 pages of poetry, that's why. It was never meant to be presented as prose. It's poetry. This book is a love letter from the soul to the ego. And I'd like to read to you a little bit about plans, okay? This is how it works. It says, a healed mind does not plan. It carries out the plans that it receives through listening to wisdom that is not its own. It waits until it has been taught what should be done and then proceeds to do it. It does not depend upon itself for anything except its adequacy to fulfill the plans assigned to it. It is secure in certainty that obstacles cannot impede its progress to accomplishment of any goal that serves the greater plan established for the good of everyone. A healed mind is relieved of the belief that it must plan, although it cannot know the outcome which is best, the means by which it is achieved, nor how to recognize the problem that the plan is made to solve. The mind that plans is thus refusing to allow for change. Today, we will receive instead of plan, that we may give instead of organize. And then it finishes like this. It says, if there are plans to make, you will be told about them. They may not be the plans you thought were needed, nor indeed the answers to the problems which you thought confronted you, but they are answers to another kind of question, which remains unanswered yet, and yet in need of answering until the answer comes to you at last. It says, and this is curious, it says in the text, this is your Easter time. Try not to shape this day as you believe would benefit you most, for you cannot conceive of all of the happiness that comes to you without your planning. This is what the Course has to say about plans and receiving plans instead of making them. I'd have to say to you, my whole life, I've had a plan. I've had lots of plans, and almost all of them haven't worked. I still feel the temptation to make plans, but I can honestly say to you the best things that have ever happened to me have happened to me without my plan. One instance, just to give you an example, and this sort of fits again, Mary, with your story about being a bit too busy to hang out with JR. I was very lucky to work on a project with a brand called Dove, Dove and the Real Beauty campaign. Have you come across that campaign at all? It's a wonderful campaign, I believe. It was trying to show the world another way to do things. I was the coach to two of the presidents of Dove for a period of 5 years, and it really does remain some of the most wonderful, beautiful work I think that I've ever participated in. How it came about. My friend Dana Zohar, who's the author of a book called Spiritual Intelligence, invited me to dinner with a senior leader of Unilever. Unilever owns the brand called Dove. She had a feeling that I would enjoy this man's company, and she asked me would I like to come to dinner too. Now my first thought was no, mostly because I wasn't invited to the dinner by him. My second thought as well was no, because I just felt like I'd be a gate crasher. And my third thought was no for some other reason, and I don't know what it was, but basically it was no, no, and no. And Dana said, no, you're coming. So I came to the dinner, and over dinner, this man offered me an invitation to give a talk in Singapore. It would be in Singapore that I would meet Silvio Legnardo, the president of Dove, and that I would then begin this program for 5 years of trying to help the world of marketing see what's possible when you come from love in your work. But I so nearly missed it, because when he offered me a chance to speak in Singapore, I had my diary with me, and he said, are you free on this date? He was sort of sitting in front of me, and I was sitting with, Dana was here, and I was here. And he offered me this date to go and speak in Singapore. And I opened up my diary, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm booked, I can't come. And I was holding my diary a bit like this. And Dana looked over at my diary and said, but Robert, it only says golf. And I nearly missed one of the greatest projects of my life because of, again, I had a plan to play golf, okay? That was how it nearly happened. So I'm going to suggest to you, make no plans, but what I would like you to do is to commit all over again to your daily spiritual practice. Whatever your daily spiritual practice is, One way to graduate, I believe, in your daily spiritual practice is to fall in love with your practice all over again. What is a daily spiritual practice? It can be many things, and this is one way to describe a practice which I've written for you, and it's a poem called So Sweet. She is so sweet to me, my soul. Each day starts with a bang, taking breakfast orders downstairs in the kitchen cafe, doing the school run against the clock, working through another to-do list which I'm not on. It's so non-stop, but when I do manage to pause and pay attention to my life, I always find a love note waiting for me in my heart. She is so sweet to me, my soul. Strength, courage, and wisdom. She goes with me wherever I go. She is my constant, and she always tells me what I most need to know. My soul, she loves me. She just can't help it, posting love notes in my heart while I'm fighting traffic, being busy, doing my day. She is so sweet to me, my soul. That, for me, is what the essence of a daily spiritual practice is about. Thank you. Two more things, two more messages. Message number 4, beware of dysfunctional independence. Dysfunctional independence, we need to talk, particularly if you're from a country which celebrates Independence Day, particularly if you're from a country that's just left Europe. Einstein referred to separation as the optical delusion. Freud referred to separation as the cause of all of our neuroses. Every neuroses that there is. A Course in Miracles calls separation the tiny mad idea. Erich Fromm said the deepest need of a human is to overcome our separateness and our prison of aloneness. Whenever we run into trouble, as we will, it will be because for some reason we are suffering from dysfunctional independence. Because for some reason we are trying to do life by ourselves. It's a habit we get into, particularly in individualistic cultures. I come from a long line of highly dysfunctionally independent people. My great-grandmother was blind for 9 years before any of us found out. She didn't want to burden anybody. She didn't want to trouble anyone. Even her daughter, my grandmother, was blind for 3 years before we found out, and we were looking out for her. At her 60th wedding anniversary, my grandmother had this song which she wanted played like every 3 or 4 songs, and it was Frank Sinatra's My Way. That's the anthem of independent people, let me tell you. Independence looks cool. Independence is helpful. Independence gets you out of a spot of bother. You will be able to look back on your life and you will be able to find moments where your independence was an act of love, it was healthy, it helped you to be true to yourself and to find that voice for love. But there comes a point on the spiritual path, if we're going to keep on graduating, where we have to become less and less independent. And we have to become more and more dependent. And not many people talk to us about this. But fundamentally, too much independence and we can only go so far. The next level of success for you, the next level of success for USM is an interdependence, which allows the whole world to participate in your success, which means that you participate more in the world's success as well. We give up our dysfunctional independence so as to become wholly dependent on what we can truly trust. I honestly believe the spiritual path is about fundamentally becoming wholly dependent on the divine, so that we ask the divine for grace, for blessings, for guidance in everything we do, whether it's ordering from a menu, or whether it's selecting something from our favorite shop, like, I don't know, just some new dress, some new suit, everything, we ask the divine. The great thing is, and you know this, USMers don't do it alone. You are part of a community here, And my encouragement to you will be to stay as strongly in this community as possible, to bring more people into this community too, so that this community doesn't have hard edges, so that it can actually relate to other communities around the world, but that we find this way truly to stay connected and to know that really you have the support of 5,500 graduates at least who are helping you right now. And that doesn't even count, by the way, I think, not just the faculty, physical faculty, but the spiritual faculty that's behind you as well. Ever since I have been introduced to USM, I feel like I've become just part of a family. Wherever I go in the world, wherever my family goes in the world, we meet somebody who comes up and says, "Hi, I'm a USMer." And it's remarkable how often it happens. I've been thinking about this. What is this USM? I'm thinking it's a code for, and I've written this down, maybe it's some sort of universal soul membership. Ron, this one's for you. Maybe it's a union of spiritual magicians. Something like that. But you know, it's so powerful. This USM, if it was a card, like a USM card, it would be better than Fast Track at Disney, Reserve and Ride at Legoland, Priority Pass at an airport. I mean, this would be a powerful card, I'm telling you. You can get stuff done with this card. My encouragement to you here, truly, is to become more and more dependent on what you know to be true. And in this way, we become less and less dysfunctionally independent. And in becoming less and less dysfunctionally independent, we can trust. We can trust that we are here to do something powerful and that we have the power of the universe behind us to do it. Message number 5. You're ready. You are ready. I'm going to go back to the tale of two selves. There's one self that's already ready. There's one self that's been ready right from the beginning. There was a self made by the divine that made you completely whole, completely hooked up to the oneness, and available to infinite possibility. There is another self that's getting ready, and that's been getting ready for a very long time. When I was around about 18 years or so, maybe, around about 18 years old or so, I began to note a fantasy, a recurring fantasy that was happening in my life. And the recurring fantasy was that everything was going to get better in about 18 months' time, which is fine when you're 18 years old, because you've got plenty of time to go. But through my 20s, what I realized was that this plan that was going to happen in 18 months' time was still 18 months away. So when I was 25, everything was still going to get better in 18 months' time. When I was 30, everything was still going to get better in about 18 months' time. And it just went on and on. And there was this awareness that began to develop in me that actually this self, the self that I've been trying so hard to be, is going to run out of time if I'm not careful. So there's a self that needs another 18 months. And there's a self that's saying, you're ready. Let's take some scenarios for a minute. Relationships. It's been a desert for years. You've been looking for love for a long time. You've met a lot of people who are looking for love too, and neither of you have found it on any dates you've ever gone on. Finally, somebody shows up. Self number 1 says, you're ready. Self number 2 says, do you think so? Really? I might be, you're right. I'm just going to do some more therapy first, and then we'll see. Then we'll see. Another scenario, babies. Babies. You've been thinking about having a baby for a while. Self number 1, the original blessing, the original self says, that's a good idea. God knows how to make babies. Self number 2 says, yeah, I know, but I think I need more time. I don't feel like an adult yet. You know, maybe we should just practice a bit more first. Yeah, maybe that's what we should do. Or let's take the scenario of a job. You know, there's this job you've seen, that you've heard about, and it occurs to you, it'd be really good to go for this job. And your true voice says, apply for it. And the other voice says, do you know what? Yes, I will in 18 months' time after I've had more experience. Or maybe it's about a book. Maybe you've got a book in you, and that true self says to you, I can help you write that book if you like. And then that other self says, yes, we'll do it after I've taken another writing class. One more writing class and I'll get on with this book. Or maybe it's something to do with purpose. You've been looking for your purpose and you're so nearly there and you think you're going to do it and you're going to follow your joy. But then that other self says, yes, we'll do it in 18 months' time when we have more savings. Or maybe it's to do with teaching. You think to yourself, I'm ready to teach. And your soul says, yes, you would make a great, great teacher. And that other self says, yes, I think you might be right. One more qualification should do it. Another 18 months. Maybe it's travel. You want to travel somewhere. You want to go on a pilgrimage. And your soul says, this would be such a gift for you. And the other self says, yes, but you've got cats. And also a guinea pig that lives in the garden. Really? Oh, yeah. I forgot about the guinea pig. I haven't fed the guinea pig. Yes, you've got responsibilities. In 18 months' time, you'll be fine. Are you saying my cat's going to die in 18 months? No, I'm just saying 18 months' time would be good. Or maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's you're thinking it's time to take a stand. Maybe it's time to be the leader that you've always wanted to be, and your soul says, I can help you make that stand. And then the ego says, yeah, but the world's not ready. The world's not ready. Let's give it another 18 months or so. It's like the ego lives in the nearly now, the almost now, but the not now. It's like the ego believes in now, but not this now. Does that make sense? It's like we're going to live in the now, but not this one. We're going to wait for a better now. And when we're in a better now, that's when we're going to show up. That's when we're going to be present. That's when we're going to take a lead in our lives. And the whole time we're just waiting for the right time in about 18 months' time. But then something awful happens one day. Because, you've been hearing this voice saying to you on and on again, like in 18 months' time, it will be right. I can finally get out there and live. I can be who I've come to be. And one day you put a proposition to yourself. The soul says yes, but the ego this time says, you're too old. And you go, excuse me? What do you mean? And the ego says, yeah, you're too old. And you say, I don't understand. I thought I had at least another 18 months. And the ego says, yeah, but you did, but that was 18 months ago. That was your last 18 months. You've run out of 18 months. But I thought I was still about to peak, according to you. Yes, that was 18 months ago. You did peak, actually. Oh, but I thought I was in my prime. And it's like, no, you're just too old now. It's over. And that, I believe, is honestly how the ego runs out of time. So what do we have to do? I think we have to live not by ego's time, but by God's time. And God's time, I believe, is really all about now. The truth is, your ego, your self-image, your persona will never, ever be ready to do your soul's work. That's the good news. Why? Because your ego isn't here to do your soul's work. You are here to do your soul's work. The soul will do this work through you. Graduates, ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, I've been talking to you all along, by the way. I hope you get this. More than ever before, this world, we know, needs to evolve in a direction of love. More than ever before, you and I, we have to take a stand in love. We're not just going to be here to give love, to preach love, to talk about love. We are here truly to be the presence of love. I believe that's what the USM schools and the programs are for, to help each and every one of us understand that we are here to be the presence of love. Everybody in the world at some point in their life have said to God, please send help. Please send help. And God did send help. God sent you. You're here to show the world how to evolve in the direction of love. And I just want to say, I wish you just every success and every happiness in your mission. God bless you, and I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Robert. Thank you for pushing